potentially hazardous asteroids, or part of the necessary infrastructure for a spacefaring species. Given that humans are humans, our population on the Earth will continue to grow. At some point, we will have to colonize space, or there won't be anything left on Earth but standing room for humans. To colonize space, we'll need many different things. One of those things is a source of water. Water is something that we can't live without, yet lifting it into space is expensive. The water needed for just one human for one day costs approximately 10,000 US dollars to lift to orbit. There has to be a better way. There are currently roughly 1,900 objects in space that are listed as potentially hazardous asteroids. Not because they are close to the Earth in their orbits, but because one of them might wander one day into a collision with us. Out of those 1,900 objects, roughly 1,000 have been identified as water-rich. There are even more such objects in the orbits between the Earth and Mars and beyond, objects which we will end up colonizing as we continue to move into space beyond Mars and Jupiter. The mineral values of these asteroids alone is estimated to be in the range of hundreds of quintillions of dollars. Retrieving water from the moon is one of the proposals put forth to provide fuel and water for future human presence in space. Yet there is water that is easier to retrieve than using the moon: the asteroids. As an added incentive, the asteroids themselves not only have the potential water resources, but other needed minerals and materials, some of which could become quite profitable to those with the fortitude to pursue them. Both Japan and the US have proven that space vehicles can reach these asteroids and land upon them. It is estimated that the water on the asteroids is far larger than the water that is locked in the lunar poles. Mining the near-Earth asteroids for water will become a future industry, an industry that will enhance any colonization of Mars and beyond by establishing a presence between the Earth and Mars that could serve as a transportation hub, infrastructure, communication points, and shelters or rally points in the event of an emergency on a future Mars colony. That those points would be closer to that colony than trying to respond to it from the Earth. Would also establish other places on the asteroids themselves or in space habitats such as O'Neill colonies, where those colonists could build cities, lives, futures, and an advancing civilization. To be sure, it would generate great changes in the human race, but those changes are coming anyway. One benefit of using water from asteroids is that space refueling of orbital satellites would be possible. Currently, when a satellite runs low on fuel, it is either deorbited, so it burns up in the Earth's atmosphere, or it is left to orbit forever, a useless piece of space junk that becomes a danger to any manned orbiting vehicle or station that might get close to it. Using resources from space to refuel those satellites in space would extend their effective life and thus the cost of deploying them. Another possible use would be to bring water back to the Earth. Mankind uses a lot of water. At some point, we will need more than the planet can provide for us without destroying our planetary water cycles and ourselves in the long run. In addition to providing water resources, asteroids will enhance any attempt to colonize Mars. Several of the asteroids cross our orbit and the orbit of Mars because of the vectors of their orbits. This would provide a stepping stone, so to speak, for supplies and resources to be transferred in stages to the asteroids when they're close to us, and then to Mars when they're close to Mars. It would result in a less expensive overall trip and provide a solid foundation for a space-based infrastructure. Building way stations and small colonies on those asteroids would also ensure a stable Mars colony with at least one way station always in contact and close enough to provide help, extra resources if needed, and quick response in the event of an emergency on the colony. Asteroid-based resources would give us also the ability to provide heavy materials, water, for instance, to spacecraft after they lift from Earth to orbit. Being able to lift without that extra weight would make the cost of launching the spacecraft far less than it is today. It would also give us a stable platform from which we could build shipyards to make ships that would never land on a planet. Ships that would be only used to travel between planets and asteroids or between the planets. If we picked the right asteroids for these shipyards, it would also initially provide all the raw materials to construct the ships without having to deplete Earthside resources beyond what is necessary to construct the initial colonies. If those ships were constant thrust type ships, the only time their crews would experience the zero G or low G effects would be when they were in orbit around the destination or in orbit around where they started from. They would shorten the time necessary to make the transit from the Earth to Mars while providing the crew with a simulated gravity environment during the transit. We might even build ships out of the smaller asteroids themselves, ships that would never touch a planet but instead would simply cruise from one orbit to the other, speeding up or slowing down as necessary. Of course, I understand that what I am talking about is years and years of step-by-step construction and will not be easy or cheap. It is not something which will be done in a decade. However, it is something which must be done. There is no other place for us to go but up. The Earth itself is a finite resource. Mankind is infinite. If we don't move on, we will die as a species right here in our own nest. Without water, colonizing space would be difficult to impossible, yet we cannot deplete the available water on Earth by shipping it into space without damaging our own water cycle. Without colonizing space, we will eventually overpopulate ourselves into oblivion. That makes finding and collecting the resources in space the only viable option. Colonizing space would also provide a relief valve of sorts to ease the future populations as our species grows larger than this planet can reasonably support. Every little speck of blue or gold in the following picture is either a planet or an asteroid. Think about that. There are enough orbiting objects in our local star system to keep mankind busy exploring for several thousand years. All we need is water and the gumption to do it. Thank you.